Welcome to the Third Gen Workshop, everybody. If you like our videos, please take a minute to hit that subscribe button. Today's video is part one of how to install and wire your trailer with a 7-pin wiring harness. In this video, we will cover the 7-pin harness, the termination block, adding a grounding block to your trailer, and running the wires the length of the trailer. Let's get started.
Let's talk about the 7-pin wiring harness that we're going to be putting on the trailer and how we're going to connect everything up. The first thing you should know and have is a plan on how you're going to wire up your trailer. Now, I'll put these pictures in the video and leave like a 10-second viewing window so you can snapshot it if you would like. But it's very important that you understand both the 7-pin harness that you've purchased, how it relates to the wiring block you're going to put in, and then how that relates to your trailer wiring. Unlike cars, where negative is black and positive is red, on trailers, white is typically the negative or the ground, and your auxiliary power is typically black, and auxiliary power being for charging your batteries and things like that. So it's very important that as you look at the 7-pin, you understand where each of these things are. In this particular case, this diagram would be just like this, with this notch up, and the bottom, right down here, be your ground, and then just following the diagram around as to which pin is which. Your electrical brakes would be the next one on your left. Your right turn signal will be your brown over here, which is your right turn, and your brake. Then your auxiliary power, your running lights or your tail lights, and then your left turn would be over here. A very unused pin on these 7 pins is the middle one, and those are for reverse lights, which this trailer that we're wiring up, we're going to put reverse lights on. So that's the pin out. The next thing you need to understand is how everything is going to pin out into your terminal box. Now, the thing that you have to remember is I'm going to match my colors to the wiring harness that I purchased. These are pretty universal. Every now and then you'll see a different color in here, a purple or something that will replace one of these wires. Just read the instructions for your harness as to which wire is which, so you know which wire goes where on your pinout. But in general, these are pretty much the standard colors, red, green, yellow, white, blue, brown, and black. The other thing I just really want to talk about real quick is this pin that plug that I bought, the harness that I bought. You'll notice this harness has LED lights here on the inside or on the outside on both sides. And I like these lights, because when you plug your trailer in, especially if your lights are on, these will light up to tell you and validate that you have a hot connection in your harness from your tow vehicle. Now, the wiring harness into the pinout block is going to go very much like this. We're going to wire it up the same way. Your ground, your auxiliary power, including the yellow, which is your reverse light. So your turn lights, your running lights, and then your brake. The other thing that you should always have when you're doing your trailer is I like to have a wiring diagram of what I'm going to run where. A lot of people will run the wires down one side, and then they'll loop them over to the other side for their mating component, and then run everything over for your turn signals. That's if you're wanting to save money on wire, you can do that, no problem. That's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to run independent runs down both sides of my trailer. We'll show you in a little while how I'm going to make that really easy to do. But I have everything mapped out as to which goes, what goes to what side. The core difference being brown to the right side, red to the left side for the lights. But this shows me my wiring diagram, and then we're bringing everything up into this corner to bring it through under the tongue. Lastly, before we actually start wiring everything up, is I also have this 7-way cover, plug cover. Make sure you put this on your wiring harness before you wire everything up, otherwise you'll be taking your wiring harness back off, which I unfortunately did the first time I wired one of these up. These are great. It protects it goes right over the end of the plug when you're not hooked up. Keeps all the water and everything out. Just helps prolong the connections and the wiring, and keeps rust and all that kind of stuff away. So very good thing to do. You're going to get a harness that comes with a lot more length than you need. And you'll have to trim off the rest. So one tip to note is that most wires from the front of the tongue to the tow vehicle are on average 33 inches to 40 inches in length. So when you stretch this out, the length from the tip of that tongue out to your tow vehicle is typically 33 to 40 inches. Now, if you're doing something bigger, like a enclosed cargo trailer, car trailer, race trailer, etc., something that if you're towing with a half-ton truck or a tow vehicle that you use a weight distribution hitch, you're going to want something a little bit longer. You need to take into account the length that the weight distribution hitch will add from the tongue to your receiver, because typically those will add another foot or so, especially if you have a drop hitch or things like that. So always know your distances. You have to have plenty of room for that cable to move, if you're turning left or right, so it doesn't get pulled out of your vehicle or it's not too tight and damages something. If you are running a weight distribution hitch, and you're wiring this up for that kind of a vehicle, I would move closer to 48 inches from the tongue. And then, whatever distance you need back to where you're mounting the box. So just a couple tricks just to be aware of. Weight distribution hitches, things that extend the connection point of the trailer further from the vehicle, are things you have to take into account when cutting down your harness or measuring the length. So always start from the tongue, get a minimum of 33 inches. Just play safe, go 36 inches, 3 feet. If you have a weight distribution hitch, go 48 inches. And because a little bit long is better than too short. One thing I do recommend you get is a wire fish. Doesn't have to be this exact one. I have this because I pull a lot of cables for networking and things like that. Used to at work and when I wired my home. You need something that will give you at least 4 feet of length and something that is rigid and is not going to bend a lot. If you have a fiberglass fish, that's great. You could use, a small piece of like all thread or something like that that's, thin dimension that you can loop onto. The reason it's important is I'm doing a lot of heat shrinking on my vehicle, and I'm not just using these little, 1-inch heat shrinks. I'm using heat shrink tubes that are 3 and 4 feet and cutting them to length where I'm going to do heat shrink. And 16 gauge wire will not push through heat shrink like this. This is a 4-to-1 heat shrink, where it'll collapse, down pretty significantly. But 16 gauge wire won't push through this. So you need something that you can push through that's rigid, that you can connect to the wire and then pull it through. So that way you can, put your heat shrink where you want. You're going to need a lot of wire. So I'm going to use 16 gauge automotive wire, and the colors that I'm using are going to match the colors from the wiring harness that I purchased. So red, white, blue, green, yellow, black, and brown. Just a reminder, if you did buy your plug cap, put it on your harness before you get it all wired into the box. As you run your cable, it's very important that you secure them. So I'm using these 1/2-inch cable clips that have been dipped in vinyl, so I don't have metal on metal or metal on rubber when I secure it. And I'm going to put 3 of these, 1 here and then 2 underneath, to secure this wire harness to my trailer. We've got our mark to trim this back. We're going to put the grommet on the harness before we do any trimming, so it's, the waterproof connection is on. All right, what we want to do is take out the plug, because now we have our wiring harness through this grommet. Before we secure this in place, we're going to trim back the exterior shielding. Take your time with this. You don't want to break, you don't want to cut the internal wires. And there you go. Now we will slide this in to the harness, and voila. Now your black wire, which is your auxiliary power, and your white wire, which is your ground. And yes, those of you that normally do automotive, yes, black is normally ground, but on trailer wiring, white is ground. The ground wire and the auxiliary power wire, those are 10 to 12 AWG. So for the white and black wires, you're going to use a yellow because you need the bigger size. And for all the other wires, you're going to use the blue 1680 AWG. And make sure you get terminals that are big enough, that the holes are big enough to go on here. All right, so we're going to start by cutting back these wires. Then we will crimp the ends on, and then using our wiring diagram that we showed you earlier in the video, using this wiring diagram, we will wire this box up. So the very first one we're going to put in is our ground. So give yourself a little bit of extra room. There's plenty of room in the box for some extra wiring. So give yourself plenty of room or plenty of wire. Don't cut yourself too short. Ground wires in. Now we still need to ground this to the frame, but this is the grounding wire from the truck. Next one we'll do is the 12-volt black wire. The same kind of a thing. We're going to trim this off so I have plenty of room to work, but not so much room, not so much extra wire that everything's in the way. Volt auxiliary power, done. The next one we're going to do is yellow, which is our reverse lights. And This will be our red, our trailer brake lights. Next one is green, which is our running lights / tail lights. The next one is our brown wire, which is our right turn and stop. And then the last ones are blue for electric brakes. Install this grounding block. Now, for this to work right, I've got to peel away this metal, or the paint on this metal. This needs to be metal to metal contact. So, two things. You're going to need a Dremel, so you can strip away this paint. And secondly, you're going to want to make sure you're wearing protective equipment, you know, a nice face shield to prevent debris from getting in your eyes and things like that. So we're going to strip off the rhino liner from this section so we can get this metal to metal contact. All right, now this will be metal to metal contact. Okay, we have our ground block installed. That is metal to metal, so this will suffice for anything else that we need to ground. So we're going to run a grounding cable from here to here. There'll be another grounding cable that comes in from the battery, but we're going to use one for the trailer wiring and one for the large battery separately. Before I pull the rest of the wires, I figured it might be a good idea just to go ahead and get my ground wire pulled and out of the way. So we're going to go ahead and wire up this grounding wire. Okay, now need an Allen wrench to pop that out. Probably still a little too long. All right, grounding wire to the frame in place. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to run all of our cables down and through this pre-drilled hole. And when we're done running all the wires through here, we're going to actually run heat shrink down it. If you watch the prep video, you will note that I deburred all these holes. So there's no sharp edges on any of these holes. But for just long-term, vibration and wear, we're going to add a layer of heat shrink to the wire bundle once we get them through here. To show you what we've done, so I didn't want to spend the time videoing me running the wires, but all the wires are through. And then down the trailer, you can see we have wires on the left side and wires on the right that go all the way back. Now I've given myself plenty of extra wire across both sides to get everything wired up. And I'm following the wiring diagram that I showed you earlier. So the next step is we're going to terminate all of the wires up here at the junction box. And before I put the ends on, we'll get everything cut and stripped, but before I put the ends on and then actually plug them in, then we will run a long piece of heat shrink around this wiring bundle to protect it. All right, we need to strip all of these wires. All right, these are all the wires for the right side. To pull the wires through the heat shrink, I end up having to get one of my wire pullers that I use for networking cables when I'm doing housing. So we're going to attach a guide wire to this and then pull them through. This is why you pull extra. So there's plenty of wire to do all of my connections. one of the things I wanted to show you was this piece of L iron. I had one welded on each side of my trailer before I had it painted. And if you watch the prep video, you know that I pre-drilled holes. I have more of these wire loom brackets or hooks, and I have them just about every 12 inches. And these wires will eventually be in wire loom when I'm done, but this at least gets them up off of the ground as I'm putting things in. So these were pre-drilled and painted, and now when we get the wire looms in, we'll close it all the way up. So I have them all the way around the front of the tongue, so you can see them coming in from where the wires come through the front of the frame all the way over, and then they run down both sides of the trailer. You can see the other one over there. So I have the wires up off the ground for now. And now we're going to start installing the running lights.
Thank you for watching. If you like these videos, please hit the subscribe button. Our next video, in part 2, we will talk about the installing of the LED running lights, the LED brake and turn signals, and the LED reverse lights. Look forward to seeing you next time here on Third Gen Workshop.